Well, of course, the two countries, the US and France, keep stressing how strong their bond, the relationship between the two countries is. France, of course, the oldest ally of the US. But yesterday, the French president addressed his compatriots at the French embassy and used strong words, saying the US think first and foremost about the US and then about their rivalry with China. The risk is for France and Europe as a whole to be left out and to suffer from that very difficult relationship between the US and China. The Elysee Palace tells us that Emmanuel Macron, the French president, today at the White House with Joe Biden, will be very clear with a message clear and loud, saying basically, you need a strong Europe. You can't afford to have a weakened Europe, and therefore you need not to help us, but to take measures that don't damage our economy back in Europe. This because we share the same democratic values. We are your allies. We are on your side. That's what President Macron will be saying. Regarding the Inflation Reduction Act, that $400 billion aid package for US companies given by the US government, France and Europe says it's unfair competition. And that's one of point of friction between the two countries. President Macron expecting from President Biden some concessions, possibly some exemptions. But France standing firmly beside its US ally. Here at the White House, there will be a much-awaited meeting, face-to-face, of course, between Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron. The two leaders met yesterday at an Italian restaurant in Washington, in Georgetown, with their wives for a very warm moment, a private dinner. Not sure they talk that much about politics, and that's why here they'll be doing that in the Oval Office, and then a press conference. And I can tell you there will be a lot of questions asked to the two leaders regarding business deals, economy, and the war in Ukraine.
Well, so there's been disagreement over trade. What about some other issues where the U.S. and France are actually on the same page?
Well, the war in Ukraine, of course, the US and France helping the Ukrainian forces to defend their territory against Russian troops who've invaded. We spoke to the spokesman of the State Department, John Kirby. I asked him, are the US going to send more weapons, more aid to Ukraine? That's exactly what the Ukrainians have been asking for. That's what former Secretary General Rasmussen of NATO is asking for. Well, John Kirby replied, we're going to be sending just as much as we've been doing so. Don't forget that we are the prime supporters of the Ukraine in terms of the amount of aid, of weapons, and that will continue. That flow will not stop. The US say that they're rather happy with the way, very happy actually, with the way France and Europe is helping in this effort, helping the Ukrainians. And they say that France is giving weapons and is also training Ukrainian troops on the ground. And that's exactly what Kyiv needs, and President Zelensky. France, the US see eye to eye also regarding peace talks. They want Zelensky to get to the table of negotiations, but when he thinks it's appropriate, when he thinks it's necessary, it's for the Ukrainians to decide that. But of course, the US, France standing firmly beside Ukraine. So that's one of the points they'll be discussing here at the White House with this much-awaited meeting at the Oval Office.